So this panel conversation, which I'll be helping lead, is about community engagement, which we've had some lively conversations about already. So there's a couple questions that would get started here, but we want this to be a conversation. So ask your questions. We can pass the mic around as well so we can hear you well. So I'm just going to kind of start down here because we haven't had a chance to hear from Sean yet. Just kind of who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your co-working community, like how large, that kind of thing.
Hello. Good. Sean Florgo. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania, which is the northwest, right under the lake. Third or fourth largest city in PA. We're the only co-working space in the city. City of about 100,000, metro area of about 300,000. Yep, Bill's nodding yes, he knows numbers. So we've been building for about 3 years, and we've seen some pretty great successes. People who've transitioned out, people who've been there the whole time. We've seen people who in the second year of being there have only then really found their hook and gotten engaged, and so we understand the long time to cultivate community engagement.
I'm Angel. I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. My space has 80 members. And what was the question? I'm struggling.
And it was just kind of a little bit about your co-working community, like 80 members, where you're from, and then
Yes.
we'll dive a little deeper.
Okay, so our special flavor is that we're a friendship-based co-working space, and so if your goal in life is to make more friends, then Cohere is the right place for you.
I'm Sam Abrams. I work with Alex at Indy Hall in Philadelphia. We have 316 members as of yesterday, because I counted, I guess. Although we really only see like 50 to 100 of them regularly. Many are virtual or work full-time or have moved away, and then they'll come visit sometimes. And we're community-focused, but I want to be friendship-based. That sounds so great.
We're all stealing it.
I'm Alex, and I'm going to steal everything Sam said, and Angel said, and Sean said about Indy Hall. But awesome to be here again.
Right, and Candy Factory and Rock Candy is our space. So a little bit of how did you build your community? Was that something you cultivated before you opened, like we've talked about? Was it something, did you make the mistake of opening the doors and seeing where you landed?
No, so when I came back to the city of Erie about a little over 3 years ago, I had come back on a short-term contract. I thought I would work in a co-working space because I came from a co-working space in DC, and when I didn't find one, I was surprised. And I thought that was a great opportunity for me to fulfill my purpose and bring something great to the city. And my co-founder, Bill Scholes, was the only other person I found in the city who had even heard of the idea. So we started finding a bunch of people who wanted to work together, didn't quite know what that would look like, and we ended up with about a dozen, other than us, who said, yeah, we all want to find a place together, and we want that place to be open and accessible to even more people we haven't found yet. And once we had worked a few times at coffee shops and had meals together and really were enthusiastic, and we're all willing to commit resources, so not just two people who would lead everyone else, but everybody was going to pitch in. That was when we decided, yeah, this should actually happen because we know a dozen people will want it, and that's good enough for us, and we hope more will come out.
I had just been fired from a tech startup, so I went to volunteer at the incubator in my town to learn how to be humble. So I got to be the assistant to the receptionist, which is as challenging as it sounds. So I learned how to shut up and just do my job. And I was alone in this giant reception area, and somebody mentioned the concept of co-working to me back in 2009. And I said, oh, so you just like collect cool people in a room? And I was like, I can do that. So I asked the incubator if we could practice co-working every Tuesday for a little bit, and they're like, yeah, we don't even know what you're doing over here. Like, we don't even know why you're here. And so every Tuesday, people would come and we would pretend to know what co-working was. And we did that for 5 weeks, and then we ran out of chairs and broke their internet. And so they asked us to move away. And then we got our first little space. And so when we opened on our first day, all of our seats were full, which is a magical place to be in.
Sam wasn't there at the beginning, which is why she's passing me the microphone. And you heard a little bit of my story earlier, and similar to Sean and Angel, a series of going out, finding people who I had things in common with, getting together by really any means that made sense, going to other events to meet one person and follow up and say, hey, I enjoyed meeting you. We should do that again sometime. And slowly but surely starting to go to meetups, not by myself, but with a small group of people. And once those people start being seen together at multiple other places, other people start asking questions like, how do you all work together? And we're like, yeah, kinda. And over the course of about 10 months or so, developing that into this group of people who just wanted to be around each other. We were all doing our own thing. Some people were freelance, some people were remote working, but again, the thing we had in common is we could work from anywhere, but we were feeling kind of lonely, stuck at home. By the time we were opening the space, I like to describe the space, and I guess this is relevant to where we are. Opening the space was more like a barn raising. The activity of opening the space was one of the biggest activities to bring us together. And one of the worst parts about having the space open was we were done with building the space. We had to come up with new things to build together. So the actual opening of the space was a integral, if not one of the most crucial parts of building our core community. And we've sort of repeated that playbook through expansions and everything else as well.
I think that's a really key piece of this is really getting your potential members, your network together to collaborate in the process of this, and not if I build it, they will come and somehow I know exactly what they need. It is getting hands dirty. It's building those friendships. It's, getting people engaged even prior to there ever being a physical space has been such an important piece of our story, and it sounds like very similar to all of you. So now, once you've built that community, you guys are doing well in your areas. How are you engaging? Are you keeping members engaged, and how are you getting the word out about what you do?
All right. I mean, the core of everything we do, it just comes from our members. So Alex mentioned that the most important thing we do is listen and figure out how to turn what we're hearing into something that we can empower a member to do, but also if it seems like everybody's interested in something, how do we make it possible to say yes is basically what we're looking to do. And how do we make sure that we can make it as easy as possible for members to know that they're invited, to know that it's really, really easy to do. So our events are now on this kind of streamline that terrifies me, because you just see a whole bunch of meetups pop up and you're like, okay, great, you guys got it. Do you need anything? No? Great, that's awesome. And then the best part about all of that happening is then we can just talk about what's already existing and folks want to play or they want to join in. The other thing that's nice is when members are really empowered to do it, it doesn't have to necessarily be things that we're interested in. So you mentioned home brewing. We have a group that does a kombucha batch. I will never be interested in that. But like that group has they're empowered to like have all their supplies to share, like, hey, we made a mango one, and I never have to try it. But that also goes for, very specific professional things. We've had meetups or members asking about doing a lunch and learn that I legitimately do not understand the words coming out of their mouth, and I ask them to explain it to me like I'm 6 because I don't know what being a cloud architect means. But then they also attract more people that are interested in that thing, and then we can also look for super broad events that bring everyone together. Almost everything we do is to provide an excuse for people to talk to each other. And then they have fun talking to each other. They want to do things again, or they want to do something different that's like that. And then, once again, we find a way to say yes. Did I leave anything out?
This is how we bring people together, right?
Yeah, like engage your members, help create that, get the word out.
Boy, how do we engage our members? I mean, a lot of that is, so what we did was create a lot of opportunity with the space for people to connect. So I think a lot of bringing people together is not bringing people together for, you know, the 2-hour a session of something or for a giant activity, but people will realize a need to be with somebody else at some point throughout the day, right? That might be in the morning when they come in and they want coffee. It might be in the middle of the day when they're looking for a lunch partner, or it might be at the end of the day when, you know, they're dragging. And so a lot of our space is designed, like we have a central hub and a cafe, and our whole space intersects it. There are like 6 doors into the space, but it's isolated enough that I can get up, walk away from my desk, and I'm stepping out of my work. And I can hang out in there. People who are hanging out in there are typically looking to talk with somebody else. We created a library space where when people like want to put their heads down and focus, they can go do that, and they end up pairing up and finding relationship with the people who are also in there. And when that person in the library wants a break, the other person in the library might take a break. So a lot of our space was designing opportunities for members to connect with one another at the right time in the right way on their own. And then outside that, yes, we totally do programming. And usually it has nothing to do with work and nothing to do with co-working itself. So in the beginning, the way we cultivated that member engagement was gallery nights. So we got the building to let us use a huge, totally abandoned part of the building in terrible shape. And we cleaned it up enough to use as an art gallery. We'd show young local artists, and we would invite all the members, right? And it would start right at kind of the end of the workday. We'd bring in music and drink, and of course everybody came up. That was the art walk. But it was a reason for members to socially engage with one another without having to make any kind of a commitment, right? I don't have to commit to playing the board game, although we do a board game night. I don't have to commit to giving a presentation at a show and tell. But I do have a reason to have a drink, wander around, and talk to not only my fellow members, but other people in the community.
Right.
I think I have so many words in my brain right now. That Cohere's engagement and efforts have changed a lot as I've matured. Happy hour is not so popular with my crowd because a lot of people have kids, and it's like, 5 o'clock, I need to go home and like go to second shift, which is keep other humans alive. So we do a lot of stuff that happens during the workday. We used to have a breakfast that was really early, and that was good for a while, and then it wasn't anymore, so you just stopped doing it. But I would say to just kind of be experimental and let members experiment with the space. It was so cute. This member came up to me and she goes, Angel, some other members like to knit, and I also like to knit. Could we knit together in the living room on Tuesdays? I'm like, yeah, you can. It's not like you're dealing drugs. You know, so they do a knitting group every Tuesday over lunchtime, and that's been really fun. And they let non-knitters come and just like watch and be amazed by what they're doing. I've sort of pressured some members into doing lunch and learns because they might say like, I need more business and I don't know how to do that. And I was like, well, you're really dynamic. Have you ever thought about presenting? And so they'll do something easy, and Cohere is like a safe place to fail. So if you want to try to give a presentation over lunch just to members and you really botch it, like we'll be super supportive and sort of catch them as they fall. And then that member went on to partner with a member of another co-working space, and they went on this whole speaking circuit doing marketing and branding for small businesses and got all this new business. And it was because we sort of gave them this safe place to try a new thing and then launch from there. And then my last thing I would say is that a couple of years ago I realized that my job at Cohere is not to try to keep everyone at Cohere, it's actually to try to help them to leave. And if you can shift your mindset in that way and just be like, what can I be doing, or how can I be connecting them, or how can I be pressing them a little bit to grow so that they're not actually here forever. Because when I have a member who's been a member for 3 years in the exact same job doing the exact same thing, it's actually sort of an indicator to me that I need to try a little bit harder and make sure that, well, they might be super satisfied and then great and they can stay, but a lot of times you'll find out there's an unhappiness or a yearning that's not being fulfilled, and then you can kind of step in and help them get to the next phase of their life.
I guess for me, going a little bit off script and talking about the space itself a little bit, I think Sean talking about how you can actually design the room so that people are more likely to do things together. All the sort of social tumbling work that Sam and Angel described as well, we've done a handful of specific things to make it easier for people to do things that are in their own best interest. So Sajid was asking earlier about how do you get introverts out of their shell, and the answer is you don't. If you feel like you're trying to make people do something in terms of engagement or otherwise, it's a good clue that you aren't listening or your incentives are in the wrong place. And so there's this notion in the design world called choice architecture, which for my friends who are parents have described, this is what you do when you're trying to get your kid to go to bed. You say, do you want to go to bed in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? It doesn't matter which choice they choose, they're going to bed at some point in the next 10 minutes, but they feel like they've made a choice, and they've made a choice that's in their own best interest. And you can apply that kind of design to your own interactions as well as the space. So in co-working spaces, an interesting thing that I've seen in our own space and otherwise is people come in, they're excited to be around people, they're out of the house for the first time in a while, and then they go find a completely lonely corner where nobody else is, and they sit by themselves all day long. And the odds of them getting what they came for, if what they told us is to be around other people, is slim. And so in the design of the space, we very intentionally mix our full-time and our flex desks. So we have a very simple visual indicator. It's two different colored desks that are otherwise identical. The dark colored desks are our full-time members. The light colored desks are literally anybody else, which means if you're coming in for a drop-in day to visit us for the day, you're on a membership where you're there 3 days a week, or anywhere in between, you can sit anywhere except for a black desk, but you're very unlikely to sit by yourself. And for the full-time people, they're not sitting next to the exact same people every day. So you resist some of that stagnation. Habits are easy to form and extremely hard to break. And so designing the space that people are going to choose the thing that is in their own best interest. If you walk in and I make it hard for you to sit by yourself, you're more likely to actually get what you came for that day.
I want to touch on one thing none of us brought up is engaging your members online. So we have a lot of people who are members, they don't come in maybe more than one day a month. But things like when we go to Taco Tuesday in Erie, and it is like a religion. Our members certainly inviting every member who's a member, not necessarily in the space, but works downtown within walking distance of Taco Tuesday. We send an invite, and it just lets them know, like, we know you and we think about you, even if we don't physically see you.
We also do, and this is something that there's a lot of growth, so whoever was talking about the virtual space, I want to talk to you. Yeah. We try to do events that are also, we try to make all of our events accessible to members who are not physically in the space, so we use Zoom, so every time there's a presentation or an event, we have like a TV with a little camera, and members can pop up and be like, oh, I have a question for the person talking at a show and tell or whatever. But we also have had events that are more geared towards folks who are remote, working virtually. So one of our members who has kids and who has kind of an unsteady schedule based on so many factors, as many people do, she started a virtual movie night. So everyone would they'd agree on a movie that was on a streaming service that most folks had or you could find. They would start it all at the same time, and then in a Slack room, they'd talk about what they were watching. And so for a little while, that was really successful because then there was like a time that you were like, okay, it's 7 p.m. on a Thursday. I know I can watch a movie with some people without having to put pants on or whatever. We also have a member who's completely remote. He's only visited 2 or 3 times. And for a while there, he was doing weekly wins every Friday, which you hop on the same sort of thing. You hop on a Zoom room, you say, here's what I accomplished, here's what's coming up for next week. Everyone cheers each other's successes, and it makes you feel like you're with a group of people, even if you're working alone or working at, your 9 to 5 that you have to be at.
Well, to add to that, so communication, right, and that kind of virtual space. So we use Slack to communicate. We have a really, really active Slack channel, and so a lot of our members, who are traveling a lot or not here all the time, still feel connected. And we're constantly communicating in there, and so we have built this network of where people can post jobs, people can post, hey, we're going to lunch. Like, I think giving members opportunity to be able to really communicate, even if they're not physically in the space, is an important piece of all of this. And speaking to just member engagement real quick, like, we do a lot of different activities, members host a lot of different things, and if you're open, if you as the kind of founders and or leaders within the community, even your core community, are there to really build authentic relationships and you let your guard down, it is amazing the things that happen just naturally, where there's no forcing it, it just happens. Like, and a good example would be literally a few of us were talking about how we should all go to the beach and rent a beach house together. And so someone's like, well, where are we gonna go? And someone's like, well, let's go to Miami. And we're like, okay. So there's a big group of 12 of us all going down to Miami for a week, just very spontaneous. We all booked our tickets that day. Like, it was just this randomness. We're like, Miami in August is gonna be hot. It's gonna be, or we're renting an Airbnb house and we're all just going to co-work together. We're gonna hit the beach, but we also understand that there's people with specific needs, so we're communicating like, I don't want to go out every night. Well, I want to go. You know, so like we're working together for that. So it's amazing just how you let your guard down and things just happen. Something like that. Is there a question so far? Brian, I know you had your hand up there for a bit.
Yeah, with different spaces offering different resources to members and like connecting them to different resources, I was curious to hear what kind of members, entities, level of business are you finding thrive within your space? Like, not that there's a perfect fit, but who is a good fit as a member for the kind of space in the state that it's in right now?
We kind of have a churn. So we get the reputation for being heavy tech. I would say we're not. We have times where we have a ton of people who are working, and right now we have a lot of small teams. That was kind of new for us. There was a phase where we just had a ton of artists, and it was like, stop putting things on the walls for a second. So we don't. I mean, I also used to brag a little bit on tours that I didn't know what everybody did. Because to be completely honest, that's not the most important thing about a member for me and for my work. I'm more curious about what they're passionate about, and it could be their work, but it also could be, you know, their hobbies and how they want to knit, and is that okay? Or what they do for fun, what sort of stuff, where do they travel to, things that I can check in with them. And then, you know, I did learn what everybody does, which makes it easy to connect people, but we're constantly churning and changing, and I think every time I try and predict what our community is going to look like based on what sort of businesses or what sort of industries are there, they just prove me wrong.
Our only common denominator is we attract people who normally work from home but don't like it. And so it just doesn't matter what they do. We're heavy on remote workers right now, which provides a delightful stability to membership because they get a paycheck every month. But we also have freelancers and nonprofits and consultants.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, I think it's kind of like, where is their business at? Are they starting from scratch? Are they a large team? Are they, you know, because startups need seed money and so on and so forth. Kind of, I don't know.
I don't serve startups.
Okay.
A startup came for a tour like 2 years ago, and it was just like this eye roll for me. Because I said, oh, what are you working on? Oh, you wouldn't understand. And I was like, have you met Galvanize? You should go over there and work there. And he never came back. Because it's just like, if you're that condescending to me in our first interaction that you believe that I'm too dumb to understand the business that you're building, then you're not going to be a friendly member for us. And that's an extreme example. That happens like once every 6 years.
So is your question about like how you curate who you onboard?
I mean, I guess that could be part of it, right? Because you've seen who thrives, and you don't want to invite somebody in that you can't help, or might, you know, to your point, you sent them to another space where they might be better, you know, not just because of the way they acted, but yeah.
Sure. So I think the determining question is like, will they thrive here?
Yeah.
And so the kind of the three filters we're kind of looking for is we've had some, you know, 22-year-old, 21-year-old kids who maybe left college, they dropped out before they finished, and they're like, I'm going to start the next great web company. By the way, can you introduce me to a developer? Well, are you a developer? No. You just have the idea. Okay, and they'll ask, how do I get money from a bank? You say, well, you know, maybe you want to go to an SBDC and you want to go through a first step seminar. You might not be ready for us to take your money and let you flounder for 6 months until you figure out you can't keep spending your parents' money anymore. So we filter that out. We filter out like the insurance salesman, and we get one like every other month, who just say, so if I get a membership, then I can like pitch to your members. No, these are not like fish in a barrel that we sell to you. So we filter those people out, and we filter out the people who are jerks. You know, people who are genuinely like they're mean or they're arrogant, and we know that they're going to be problems because our first mission, you know, with member engagement, right, is to connect our members and help them thrive. Our first mission is to make sure we're always accomplishing what is best for our members. That's really the only filter we apply. You know, we would like to welcome anybody in who wants to join, and then the community adapts to the new needs.
And I think that's really important that, I mean, I think the Venn diagram for us is that friendliness and that openness. Like I think someone who shows up curious is way more likely to thrive than someone who shows up with a clear picture of what they think they're going to get out of it. People who know what they want, what they're going to get out of it, generally get the least out of it because their eyes are only on the prize that if they get it, they win, and if they don't, everything else sucks. So that open-mindedness, that curiosity, I think is really valuable. And I think there's a level of professionalism too. And I say that word with a bit of hesitation and a really big asterisk because I think what professionalism means is different in different contexts for different people. For me, it's not how you dress or how much money you make, it's more how you conduct yourself. Are you trustworthy? Are you consistent? Do you care? Early on in our development of our community, one of the things for me that was most attractive to somebody, regardless of what they did, was an element of craft to their work. Do they care about their work? Do they care about their clients? Do they want to improve? I think those are the people who tend to thrive, in addition to being, you know, friendly, outgoing, curious people.
Just to kind of add to that real quick is that I find that as the longer you do this, the more in tune you become when someone comes through the door in asking them the right questions. And that's going to be unique to everyone who walks in the door. If you have someone who's coming in and you can tell that they're looking to solicit, they're looking to I automatically change how my tune, I change my pitch, I change the you know, maybe this isn't for everyone, just so you know, and hey, by the way, we don't solicit to our members, that's not, we build relationships here. You know what I mean? And it's not that you're not friendly, it's not you're not welcoming, and there have been some people who get it and they come and they become great members, but you're clearly giving them the message that they need to hear so that you don't end up with a whole room of salespeople just looking to pitch to each other. So you do customize that based on, and you get used to it, right, as you go. You know, even Steve and I'll be like, hey, you know, so-and-so just came in, they're gonna probably be stopping by Rock Candy, just FYI, they might be looking to be you know what I mean, to sell to members, that's, you know, and we have an agreement there, we know kind of how to read, and I think that's something you learn over time. When it comes to our membership here, it is such a mix, and I love it. I love the fact that we're not a niche space. I love the fact that we're not just tech. We have every age group, every business. I preach to this day, I just met with the mayor, she'll be here today actually, which I'm excited about to talk about politics and local economic stuff, that you cannot find the talent anywhere in Lancaster County, anywhere that you can find in this building. It's unreal, the backgrounds. And we have students, we have remote workers, we do have startups, we have established businesses, we have freelancers, we have you know, nonprofits. We bring students in all the time, like high school students. We're really looking to create a hub that represents our community as a whole, but also that there's so much opportunity and gives those people opportunities. So we don't really filter, we just make sure that our messaging is clear for what we're here from the people who come through.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with the making sure to kind of cater your tour based on who's coming in the door. We don't filter at all, but we do find that our community kind of filters themselves. So, you know, if someone's coming in really salesy, I can think of one member in particular who is an accountant, came in, his introduction to the community, because we have like a little message board, was his name and his business and how to reach him. And the reality is nobody's going to respond to that because nobody wants to be solicited, so they just skim on by. The thing that was really magical, though, with this member in particular is we had told him, like, here's some things we found that work. Like, you want to come in, you want to meet people, you want to make professional contacts for sure, but I think his son had worked at a WeWork, so he had some idea. But what we didn't account for is that he is a schmoozer. He loves to come over and lean on your desk and ask what you're working on and ask a question that he thinks is stupid, but then is, of course, a really regular question to ask, and has found a ton of success just from actually talking to people and figuring that out on his own with maybe a little bit of guidance from us. So I helped him set up a lunch and learn because he had a ton of people asking him about LLC tax stuff. And that was really all we needed to do. And in many other cases, he might have been someone that would have eventually realized, like, you know what, this is not the place for me. No one's taken the bait, because our community just wouldn't. But he found his way for it to work. So even if you're toying someone and you're like, I want to roll my eyes, but I can't because I'm being polite. Occasionally it does work out. You just have to keep being very, very clear about what works and what doesn't in your community.
Yeah, I think that's key.
I was just curious, you made a reference to referring to the SBDCs. And I talked to one of our SBDC directors yesterday evening, and he made a comment that one of the things that they had been talking about in strategic planning was to put an SBDC desk in every incubator / co-working space around the state. Have any of you thought to talk or work with or bring in the SBDCs so they could provide the type of mentoring or coaching that maybe the others might want?
What is this?
Small Business Development Center.
Radius would love to do that. We have spoken with our SBDC and talked to them, but and this will actually be something maybe we bring up on the politics and co-working panel. They haven't been interested in that.
Really?
I'd be super skeptical of it. Just because I don't like I have these companies who contact me and they're like, okay, so we have a remote team, there's 5 of them in Fort Collins, and we want to have a desk at Cohere, and we want all of them to be able to share the desk, but they won't be there on the same day. And I'm just like, first off, I would want the member, like the person, the employee, to reach out to me and be like, hey, can you talk to my company about how we can make this work? But they just completely missed the point of like, well, we have all these team members, they probably want to work together, but I can't see that because I don't think that way. And so I'm going to put one person there on Monday and a different person there on Tuesday, so they can't actually be together. And I'm just thinking about the context of my SBDC. Like, I don't think I would want them to just blindly send me a member for this weird desk that's probably going to sit empty most of the time.
What they were saying is they want to have a desk that they can then meet with clients.
Oh, the SBDC sits at it.
And so when I look at it, I'm like, hey, this is way cool, because if you bring a client in that doesn't know us, they're going to get exposed to what our workshops are, they're going to get exposed to what our space is. And if you're working with someone that is one of our members, then that provides a nice convenient space and gives us some exposure. That's why we started having that conversation last night, and I was surprised to hear it was in their strat plan.
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit because we have partnerships, not with SBD, but Ben Franklin Technology has taken our second floor. It's this business resource, which actually is used a lot already, and we just launched it in March, where any of our members can go up and talk to Steve. I don't know if he's in the house. He's going to pop up. Awesome guy who will listen. Speaking of listening, who will just say, what's your idea? I don't know if we can help you, not funding-wise or that kind of thing, but what's the idea? Oh, it's this? Here, check out this, check out that. Have you thought about this? So that's open to the entire public. Anybody can come in off the street and meet with Steve, which is great. And then there's going to be this tech accelerator that we're going to have in the fall. But we also have great partnerships with our small business resources. So we're part of a small business resource coalition that's a Lancaster-based thing. And so our SCORE chapter is an award-winning SCORE. It is so phenomenal.
Yours isn't dead.
No, ours is thriving. Ours is incredible, and they just won Chapter of the Year again, and they have a presence here. We want them here. We want them mentoring. I feel I'm very passionate about mentoring. I think all of us should give back in some capacity. And then we also have Assets, which has a women's business center. And they're going to be hosting a slew of workshops here. We look to these partners because we know they're valuable to our community as a whole, not just even to our internal community. So building partnerships, I think, is a really key piece, because I'm always looking to say, hey, how can we represent our community? How can we be a resource to our community?
So I think you touched on something that's super important, and you breezed by it. And I think the answer is I don't want a particular organization, I want a Steve.
Oh, Steve.
It's all about, like, I care less about the organization and the resources they provide. I care immensely about the human being who's going to be the bridge.
Yeah.
And is that a person who would come on their own? Is that a person who would show up if it wasn't part of their job? Because I don't want someone being sent because it's their job. I don't want people in a room full of people. So if you get a room full of people who are all there because they want to be there, someone who's there because they were told to be there stands out like a big red sore thumb. So it's really, really important who the individual is. I would say that trumps the organization, even if it's got worlds of resources. If the person themselves isn't going to be a part of the community in some way and earn the trust of the members, their potential lead generation, it's more butts in seats maybe, but we're not in a butts in seats business. Someone who doesn't actively want to be a part of the community, I don't necessarily trust to bring us more people who also would just want to be part of the community. Yeah.
That makes a really good point. I mean, we're actively involved in these organizations ourselves, so we know the people running them, we know the people who are going to be part of our community. We wouldn't just kind of let anyone kind of be that touch point if we didn't trust them. So I think that's part of it. Like, you need to be as actively engaged with that potential partner for them to actually fit well into your community.
I'm super cautious when somebody says, hey, we want to partner with you. That's usually code for, we want something from you. Access to members is a big part of it. Steve's totally right. So, like, I'm very skeptical of the word partnership. I'm very interested in, hey, can we get coffee and learn how you work? Like, when people start from that path, I'm always down to walk down that path. When someone's like, hey, can we partner? It's ranging between a no and a, well, tell me more about you. You, the person, not you, the organization. And the harder it is for me to get to you, the person, through the you, the organization, the less likely it is that I'm willing and interested in.
Oh, question.
So you have a member, just off the top of my head, who clears their throat a lot.
I mean, that was my next question, Steve. About difficult members.
What's that?
Potential difficult members.
Yes. So you have clever ways if the community doesn't filter itself magically, like without putting something on the bulletin board, like please don't clear your throat every 30 seconds. Are there clever ways to do that?
Is there any way we can make it warmer in here?
Oh, yeah.
I am like in a hypothermic state.
All these troublesome members.
I know.
Too cold.
I'm cold.
What if you have a troublesome camel member? Want me to flip it to heat?
It's just, I think it's blowing directly on us. My nose is cold.
We're knitting you something over here.
Thank you. Thank you. I will put that on as soon as it's done. So for difficult members, gosh, it's so hard to talk about because each situation is always so unique and there's so many variables and Alex's favorite word, context. But we actually write several scenarios in our orientation packet about how you might talk to another member. It's really important that people don't want to tell all of their gripes to me and then have me solve the problem. We try to give the members the tools to talk to each other in a very direct way. And so in our orientation packet, we have 3 or 4 different scripts of just like annoying stuff. So you've got the leg shaker. So somebody who always does this and it jiggles against the desk. And so the script is just like, hey, are you jiggling your foot? It's making my monitor vibrate and it's all blurry and I'm dizzy. Can you stop? And it's just very straightforward. It's not this protracted like, oh my God, they're shaking and now I have to like move my stuff away and do this whole thing. We had a throat clearer, but it turns out he was a heavy smoker. And so we would just talk about like, how's your smoking going today? You're super phlegmy today. Did you have a rough night? And I'd be like, yeah, I really need to stop smoking again. And we'd be like, what can we do to support you in that? And it actually worked. He stopped smoking because we found out that he was going to smoke to get away from his computer. And so we were like, why don't we send a member with you to take a walk instead? And so you can still be outside for 15 minutes, but then you'll have so much less phlegm when you come back in for a break. And then we have other ones like, can you put your headphones on when you're taking a call because we can hear both sides of the conversation and that's awkward for us.
I'd rather hear both sides, otherwise I have to make stuff up.
What are other common problems?
Well, I want to point to something that you said is in all of these scenarios, you're looking at the whole person. So when someone's really, really annoying you, it's really easy to think of them as the throat clearer, and then you hate the throat clearer, and then you fail all the feelings about the throat clearer. But if it's like, oh, this is, John, he's clearing his throat, and there's this reason, then you get to take care of him as a whole person and not just think of him as a problem. In all of our problem situations, even when it gets escalated to something where people are legitimately upset or someone says something and they don't realize how it's taken, it's usually the thing you can come back to is the person who all people involved want to be members of the community and want to make sure things are running well. We have one member who I guess we could call a problem member because we have a lot of conversations with them, but they're also really interested in I didn't even know what I said bothered you, or I didn't know that I was disturbing you, or I didn't know what I was doing affected you in this way. And they just don't perceive it, but they're excited to learn about it because then it doesn't happen again. So that's the thing I wanted to point to. We can talk about more problems, that's fun too.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So what do you do with someone who's feeling too cold, someone else who's feeling too hot? The AC temperatures. How do you handle that?
I see you back there.
Is that a sweater?
So I can answer that. As a person who has 2-degree comfort zone, we have blankets all over our space, and so we tend to keep our space on the cooler side because, as you know, it's a lot easier to put layers on than it is to continue to take layers off because you get to a certain threshold of appropriateness in an office. So we probably have, I don't know, 6.
Friendly code space.
Yeah.
Hello.
So we have 6 or 8 blankets laying around that people use all the time, and then sometimes if the majority of the room is like, yeah, it's real cold in here, and then it's like, oh, someone turned the heat off, then you can address that. But I think just providing different ways for people to make themselves comfortable without having to use the thermostat is really useful.
Yeah, I want to get to maybe the root of that. We don't have to strive to create the perfectly comfortable space. Humans are adaptable and they have various needs, and there's almost no way to meet all of them simultaneously when you have 40 people there. The heat issue is very funny for us because we're in a 100-year-old building with a 100-year-old heat system. Some of the radiators work, some don't, some can't turn off, and so in the middle of winter, that room has windows open, this room has radiators cranked. It could be weird, but our members, it depends on the quirks of the space, and our members are adaptable. And there have been about 4 or 5 times where people have remarked, it's comfortable in here. And it's shocking.
Running a co-working space is sort of 2 categories of problems to solve. There's operational, technical, physical space things, and there's human interaction, social space things. Both are really important. But if your social interaction, caretaking, people are a little more aware of the people around them is good, you get a little more leeway when stuff in the physical arena is imperfect, like what you've heard multiple times right today. That's generally not true in the other direction. You can get the perfect temperature, climate control, most comfortable, everything. And if people are shitty to each other, it doesn't matter. So in terms of proportionality of effort, our current space has its own climate control challenges, and at the same time, it's so much better than it ever has been in any of our past spaces. And so I look at it as it'll never be perfect. We can always make small incremental changes, maybe, but also I don't take it personally when someone is uncomfortable physically.
I think transparency too, right, is really, really key. So one thing from our old space to this space was we don't have all the bells and whistles. It's gonna take a while to build this. Be patient with us. But just being transparent and having those conversations and just being open, 9 times out of 10, majority of people are like, yeah, we get it. How can we help? What can we donate? You end up, blankets. We have blankets as well. I mean, it's a big, the space is pretty good at keeping it cool and warm, thankfully, because it's a new system, but I have to say that it's not perfect. It never will be perfect. And sometimes you're gonna actually have a member who you can't appease, and there's just nothing you can do about it. And you can be as open and community, you can have those conversations, you can be great, and maybe they'll filter themselves out, maybe they won't. The one that Steve, I think, is mentioning eventually filtered himself out. But it was a lot of conversations. There was a lot of proactive conversations. We did it all, and it was one of those things where it's just ended up not being a good fit and moved on. And you can't do everything. You're not going to be perfect. Your space isn't going to be perfect. You, as a founder or someone running it, are not going to be perfect. And you're sometimes going to make stupid choices and decisions. But we try to own it, and that's the best you can do, I think.
I know one of the big things that Anne started adopting relatively recently was for the minor things that are kind of annoyances, like people not, when they clog the toilet, not plunging it themselves, or not refilling the Brita, or little things like that, or doing the dishes, help do the dishes. She kind of let the members almost kind of have their own responsibility and not depend on us full-time employees to take care of every problem ever. So she made little signs around the space.
We'll talk about signs later too.
Yeah, around the space that are super quirky and fun. No one likes when the Britas or Britas and
Well, that would be all Andrew.
little
somewhere.
things.
yeah.
So little things. So I think her putting it in the hands of the member and just kind of giving them a little nudge, hey, we acknowledge that these things are being kind of missed and people aren't taking responsibility. So it would be nice on behalf of your peers if you would just refill it.
Yeah,
or
we do.
plunge
There
your
are
own
reminders. I don't know, but we do remind our community about things once in a while. You just kind of have to. It's oh, hey, we're going to be good neighbors. We're going to not talk so loud while on the phone. These are just kind of things but that's communication, and that's just being open. Any other questions before we break for lunch? Real quick.
So Angel mentioned earlier the positivity issue. You guys are talking a lot about these cool social cultures that you have, but I feel like I'm in a unique situation where all of the members of our co-working space, their businesses are not doing well, they're not making any money, and they're feeding off of each other's happiness. So how would you suggest injecting positivity, as Angel called it? It's a good question.
Because it does fester. It does breed negativity. Breeds negativity. Right. Yeah.
I think what's important there is you identify a root cause issue, right? Which is people's businesses aren't doing well. So then there's is a question do they actively want to do the work to make it better, or do they want to wallow in their sorrow? They want to do better. Okay.
They don't. They're in a point where they're kind of so bummed out that they're not doing the work to make their businesses better, and then it just snowballs.
Right. So I think that's that's the thing I would zero in on. You can't inject positivity, but you can address a root cause problem. So if I'm trying to think about exactly how I would frame it in a conversation, which is, I've had conversations with many people in the community who are running into some business challenges. And one of the benefits of joining a community like ours is we have the ability to share the problems that we have, but also to solve them together. What if we were, what would be, maybe ask the question rather than propose a solution, right? Ask the question, what would be beneficial to you to be able to take the first small step towards solving the problem? It feels desperate now. Acknowledge that they're in pain, and then ask them what direction, what would help? How could we help each other? Is there the possibility of bringing in some outside support? What would give you a little bit of breathing room and relief? If they don't know, that's okay too, but they'll at least feel heard, and not heard in the people are listening to me bitch and complain and whine and be negative, but I've been heard, and someone recognizes that I'm in pain.
Validated.
Right. So that's the starting point, and it's tough for me to suggest anything more specific than that without knowing the people, without even knowing the kinds of businesses. Like, have people started businesses that were bad businesses to start? In which case, you can't fix that problem. You should tell them to all go get jobs. That sucks, but like, I'm also not into babying people. Like, I'm a big fan of tough love, and when my member comes to me and says, Alex, I have this awesome startup idea, and I listen to it and I go, are you open to hearing some tough love? Permission and consent is very important. Are you open to hearing some tough love? Yes. That's a really bad idea. And not because I want to shit on your bad idea, but like, I want to think through it with you. Are you willing to talk through it? And I think if you're in a situation where people actually want to improve, but they haven't heard somebody give them that tough love, you might be, if you're someone they trust, then you might be the right person. If there's someone else in the community they trust, that might be the right person. But if they're all down in the dumps because something is wrong with their business, I think finding ways to together really address that and pull up their situation together is probably that's the opportunity there.
Great. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate your insight. And thank you for the question.